Hi, Nora. Thank you so much for your work this week. I want to start with the questions that you wrote about these poems. First of all, I want to say you never have to apologize for expressing true emotion in the poems that you write in this class. So this poem is about depression. So this poem is about depression that led to suicide. You are taking this incredibly meaningful and vulnerable and um, difficult experience in your life of your uncle's death and death by suicide and the choice he made, and that you've struggled yourself with depressive and suicidal thoughts. And you're turning it into a beautiful piece of artwork. So please don't ever feel the need to apologize. Um, the repeated simplistic imagery of cutting the string, yeah, I really liked it. I really liked the snapping of the strings. It definitely felt like a build up to me. Especially, I feel like because the first time you mention it, I cut the string of what tethered me here. So my only suggestion would be um, now made silent dash relieved, that I think relieved may make more sense on this third line with the dash after it, and then go ahead and let I cut the first string of what tethered me here sit by itself um, as the last line of that stanza, because then that is mirrored in the rest of the stanzas. I cut the second string, I cut the third string, I got the fourth string, and I think that functions really well. So I would suggest that you just go ahead and let that first line, that first last line of the first stanza be reflected in the other stanzas. Um, I think um, the fact that you chose to write this in the first person is really interesting, and it does this really interesting thing because the poem ends in suicide, and so that's somewhat unexpected, and I think um, it functions really well. um, the one thing I want to say is that I think that this last stanza could use a little bit of work. I'm going to read it out loud to you. Then, after the body fell sightless, I watched as they picked up every strand of string and wove them into their lives. I never understood, and now it was too late. I think you're trying to do a little bit too much with these 5 lines, right? Trying to sum up the death of the narrator, trying to sum up everyone who's important to this narrator coming in and picking up the strings of their life and weaving them into their own lives. And then also you're trying to include the lack of understanding and the feeling of remorse. So I think it's trying to do a little bit too much. I would work on this part of the poem to expand it, to perhaps have this one stanza be 3 stanzas, because I think there's 3 stanzas worth of ideas in this one stanza that's crammed in there. So that would be my suggestion moving forward. Let me look at your questions for the second one. So I want to specifically address sunlit clay and minds as perfect circle. Um, but I also want to say that the strange rhyme scheme and the rhythm of this, I think, works really, really well for me. Um, but I want to return to this. So, our odes may be nothing more than dirt, but these bodies are more than sunlit clay. And we may etch lines in endless spin, but these minds are perfect circles despite their fray. I think it's a beautiful stanza. I think it's a beautiful ending to this poem. Um, but I did want to answer your question and say that the way that you phrase it, these bodies are more than sunlit clay, speaks to me of a creation myth of a human being that is built out of clay. And saying that because of the inclusion of a soul and a mind and a spirit, a body, which is flesh and bone, becomes more than just a pile of dirt or a pile of sunlit clay. So that's how it speaks to me. It speaks to the humanness of a body because of a soul being present in that body. And when you say, and we may etch lines in endless spin, but these minds are perfect circles despite their fray. What this means to me when I think of a perfect circle, I think about this feeling of eternity, this feeling of repetition, this feeling of completion. And so that's what circles mean to me as metaphor. So that's what I think about in terms of the perfect circle of the mind. And speaking of the perfect circle of the mind, is this idea of completion, this idea of wholeness. Um, and especially because you say despite their fray. So these minds are complete. These minds are whole despite the fact that they're afraid. So that's what it means to me. I hope that's helpful. Thank you so much for your work this week, Nora.